Welcome to MindFit Live Q&A. Today I have wonderful Darren Rooth with me. How are you today, Darren?
Good, Shane. Thanks for having me, mate.
Thanks for joining me. Obviously, so this is a live Q&A, but there's no one else online, which seems to be the occurrence. We might have to change it. I think I will be changing the time, and we might get other people on the line over the next few weeks. Those that have started watching these, you probably would have noticed there's a week gap in between these when we put these out. I had a tooth out last Wednesday, and it's been giving me a lot of grief, even still to this day. So I might even be speaking a bit differently. So Darren, how have you managed through the last? We've just got out of lockdown. I will add that in. Melbourne is officially out of lockdown. We've been talking about being in lockdown for the last few weeks with the other guests, but how have you managed through lockdown?
Well, I've been, what's this now? Gosh, since March I've been working from home. I'd normally work in a large office with about 600-700 people. So since mid-March I've been working from home, and all my work and connection with my work colleagues has been through forums like this, through video chat and emails, and it's been interesting. Certainly there's been times where you just want to break out and go and see people, and some of the things that you do in the workplace work best face to face, but I think we've found ways around that, and in fact there's probably been some good things that have come out of it too. So yeah, I guess when this lockdown stuff is back to some normality, I guess it'll be a big question about how we return back to the workplace and what that looks like.
Yeah, I think for many businesses, they may not return back to a workspace. It might be cheaper for them to have half the office at home and half the office in the office. So
yeah, it is, mate. And there's a lot of people that commute, a long distance and lose up to 3 hours a day just traveling. So I guess, again, there's some benefits. People can spend less time traveling, spend more time at home and more time with friends and family. So yeah, I think every workplace, whether it's private, I work in local government, I think they're certainly looking at the opportunities and how more efficient and effective it could be, either working from home or just a mix of working from home and going to the office when you need to.
Yeah, I know my mum's work, I think they're half will be in the office and half will be at home, and then they'll swap over whenever they'll set up a sort of plan, and they'll set all their staff up to be able to do that. And I think from what I've heard, a lot of buildings are basically going to be empty for years now, and it's going to change the whole landscape of Melbourne and Victoria, which is which is going to be great for a lot of people because their rent's going to probably go down. But a lot of owners are going to be in a bit of strife with years to come. So
they are when they're offering rebated rents at the moment too, reduced rents. Yeah, it's gonna pinch people in different ways for sure.
So yeah, you've managed pretty well through this last period of time. I mean, lucky enough to keep your job and all of that.
Yeah, it's I guess in my workplace, there's been a number of people that actually were put off because not everyone's sort of permanent. There's like casuals. Again, in my work, there's your office workers like myself, but there's also stuff that services that we offer to the community which have been shut down because of COVID. So yeah, I guess there's been lots of times just remembering that and being grateful that you got a job. And everyone sort of dealt with this lockdown differently. Our workplace has been really, really on top of that and just making sure that people feel well supported and still connected. So we've had a number of programs and stuff running where people can opt in and out to do things which keep them connected, and just down to your teams, just making sure that it's not all about the business and the work, that you have some time dedicated during the week just to check in. Right, we played what do you call it, virtual charades. We've done all sorts of things, just to have a bit of fun along the way, because I said, it's had an impact on people. I've got lots of people in my workplace that have had kids working from home, so homeschooling's been a big deal. And they're all singing hallelujah now because their kids are going back to school and they can just have a bit of quiet time and focus on their work. So it has been, yeah, it's been really important just to sort of be really aware of how it might be affecting yourself, but also affecting your colleagues as well, and just being really open about talking about how people might be going, and what are the things that they could do to, I guess, support themselves and manage, manage better through these times.
And I mean, we're going to talk about a bit about your story soon, but how do you think going through your improved mental health, how do you think that's that's allowed you to get through this period of time, well, and as you said, help others around you?
Yeah, I think just a general acceptance that you don't know what tomorrow brings. So just being really, I guess, comfortable and accepting that change is inevitable and it's happening all the time. And being really careful just to, I guess, not create too many expectations on yourself, but also on your colleagues. Understanding that there's lots of things that you can't control, and it's really just about feeling that it's okay that you might be having a flat day, or feeling that it's okay that something's not done when it said it's going to be done, and just not putting that extra pressure on yourselves and on other people unnecessarily. So that's been I think really something that has helped me, certainly just managing my own well-being, my health and well-being, my mental health. I guess not letting emotions and frustrations get the better of me. And when you see that, you see people sort of suffering and worrying about stuff, I've just been really, I guess, open to sort of just say, how you're really going, and just talk about sort of what I might be observing, and how might they, I guess, think or do things differently to not feel anxious or worry about stuff. And I think the general feeling and feedback is people have been really, happy and surprised also that people are actually taking a bit more of that approach. And I think they're feeling, as I said, they're feeling a lot less pressure, and probably, as a result, probably performing better by not worrying.
I was just thinking that as you're saying that. It's like, it's amazing when the pressure gets taken off, how much more can be achieved, because you start to relax, your mind becomes clearer. When someone's stressed, thinking about uni students, and I remember a girl I went to high school. She was the smartest girl in year 12, without a doubt. She put that much stress on herself through exam time. She basically failed them all, like it was literally that bad. She went from A pluses all year to, some of the worst scores in the in the whole of year 12. And she was without doubt one of the smartest there. And I was like, it was all stress, it was all extra pressure, and it was, whether it was family pressure or internal pressure, it was still pressure. And she lives a lot more relaxed life now, and I can see that. She's a lot more grateful, and she succeeds in life a lot more now, and with taking that pressure off. So let's go back to sort of the start. What got you in contact with Nick at MindFit?
So I've been one that's experienced sort of anxiety, which from time to time has led to periods of depression for most of my adult life. I can't really pinpoint it, but when you sort of look back on it and you sort of go, well, yeah, they were the patterns, they were the thinking styles that I had back then. So I would say most of my adult life. And I tried medication, had seen 2 or 3 psychologists, and it was really just by chance. I just met Nick by chance, and we just got talking. He was driving his vehicle with MindFit on the side of it, and I guess I was just curious to find out a little bit more what that meant, and really that was an opening for me to sort of talk about my experience and journey, and really wanting to find something different or something else that would, I guess, build my capacity to manage things as they come a lot better. So yeah, that was a couple of years ago now. So I've done the 6-week program, I've done the 12-month program, I'm now doing the maintenance program every 3 months. I think it's every 3 months. Yeah. And look, I thought when I first saw Nick that I had really low self-esteem, confidence that I could actually myself take steps to improve my mental health and how I approached things. And it was really soon into those first 6 weeks that it was just a light bulb moment. This stuff was so logical, and it was just sort of applying that logic and then starting to, I guess, change some of the language and some of the thinking, and starting to trust, that this is doable. With Nick, you talk about the hard path and the easy path, and I guess my last 2 years has been on that hard path. Do I do things perfectly every time? No, I don't. Do I keep defaulting back to some of those thoughts that are unhelpful or destructive? Yes, I do. But in those 2 years, what I've done is grown a much better awareness, and I have got the capability and the belief in myself not to stay in those thoughts. And it's more proactive, well, what can I do in this situation? That's interesting. Just stepping back and seeing what I can do, and ultimately choosing how I react or respond to that. And more often than not, it's a case of just stepping out for a bit, and then looking at, well, what's possible? What can I do? And yeah, that's been, I've been on medication for a long time now, and I just feel like I'm more empowered to manage myself, my mental health, a lot more effectively now.
Do you find, and I guess you can use yourself as an example and the people you see around you, do you feel like that empowerment is one of the key ingredients that I can do this, not that, and I guess it's handing those keys out to other people. When you're in control and you're in control, it takes the pressure off a little bit.
Yeah, it's I mean, because what you see is a person that's really disempowered. You see someone that's actually feeling quite out of control, and as you said before, someone that's been an excellent student that just for whatever reasons then doesn't believe in themselves and does really poorly as a result. You can see it, how that's affecting the person, and I'm always mindful about telling people what I think they should be doing, but putting it across from my perspective and how some of these things have affected me, and how just changing some of the thinking styles and has been beneficial. And I feel a lot more happier, and a lot more in control, and I'm able to achieve a lot more. That I think people hearing that from others and relating that to how someone's experienced and change that, I think it's really helpful. And I tend to do that in my workplace a bit. I do it outside of my workplace, again, not to tell people, but just to sort of share my experience. So if that helps them, that's my intention. And we've got some really good support networks in my workplace too. We've got a men's circle that meets every Thursday for an hour. And that group of men come along each Thursday for an hour, talk about their highs and lows, but then we have a bit of a prompt or a topic that we talk about. And it's, some of those guys have had some pretty interesting and challenging traumatic backgrounds, and for them to say this is the first time they felt comfortable in opening up, and seeking help and stuff like that. That's what it's all about.
How powerful is that? Like that's probably the one thing that gets me a little bit emotional sometimes, is the fact that some people, finally find that courage to open up in those kind of, it shows how important these groups are.
Yeah.
And when I say these groups, they've got to be constructive and look to improve, not to just sit there and complain and just vent and then walk away, because we know that that's not going to be helpful. How is that seeing that?
Oh yeah, look, you talked about emotional. I'm I could feel the emotion building up just describing that to you. So yeah, look, it's so satisfying to be a part of a group setting there where everyone's sort of on their own journey, and some haven't quite worked it out yet, but everyone's sort of there with the same intention. They want to be there, be their best version of themselves and stuff like that. And just to be able to hear how people have actually made changes in their life for the better is really uplifting and inspiring. And it's really, I find it really rewarding, that idea of just being there and listening and offering whatever, advice, or not advice, but offer people my life experience and what's worked for me. I just find that so rewarding, and yeah, that's that notion of serving others. You get such a buzz out of it, and I try and apply that as much as I can in my work, but also in my private life. And that is, when you step into a situation, what can I do to help, as opposed to what am I going to get out of it. During this lockdown, I've probably had a week there where I was getting a bit frustrated and my patience was wearing thin, and I took a week off, and I said to my boss, I'm taking a week off because I can see my behavior changing. And in that week, it was just about, okay, let's worry about what's in it for me. Let's worry about people seeing it my way, and maybe just sort of sitting back and seeing it from their perspective. Much better discussions, much better outcomes, and my energy after those conversations was still here. It wasn't down here. So, and I've just continued to take that approach every day, and just feel a lot better for it.
I love that you took a week off for that reason. I think so many, again, I don't want to generalize, but a lot of males tend to, once they get to that point where that behavior starts acting, they think they've got to work hard or work more or force things more, when it's actually, step back, observe the situation for a little bit, take some time for yourself, get yourself recharged, and then go again. And then not go again in that calm state. Nothing productive comes out of fire meeting fire. Like, that's just more of an explosion. So sometimes we need to step back. So I think it's really powerful that you did that. Let's talk. I wanted to talk more about, I guess, prior to MindFit and your experience with psychologists, and just what your experience was like with seeing these psychologists. Why do you think it didn't necessarily work? What are the changes you made, but also the things Nick might have done differently to help? Because I don't want to shut down psychologists or anything like that, because some of them are fantastic and work for a lot of people.
Yeah, but the key difference from my experience was the previous mental health plans, treatment, whatever you want to call it, focused on the problem. So it was very much, what external things can we change to make me happier, to deal, to make me less worried, less stressed. And that, after working with Nick, I guess validated for me why that was never really going to have long-term positive change. So focus on the problem, on and off the medication, for me, the medication sort of took the edge off me worrying, but it didn't stop me having episodes where I got so worried that I got into a state of depression and have a week of non-sleeping and stuff like that. So and the medication too also masked other things like my emotions. Simple act of crying and stuff like that sort of wasn't really something that came easily just as a side effect of the medication. And those years it was very there was a cycle. I'd feel like I was on top of this, and then in a month, 12 months time, there'd be something that would trigger it, and again, I didn't have the tools or the belief in myself to be able to look at it subjective or objectively, and work through that. I would fall in a heap. So, and then with Nick, as I said, his principles around taking responsibility yourself has certainly empowered me to be more responsible, about how I look after myself, but how I also hold myself and manage myself in situations. And as I said, for the first time, I felt that I actually have some control in how I manage and how I make decisions and choices. Whereas before I was relying on other people, or, it was the job or it was relationships or whatever. Those things had to change or get better in order for me to be happy.
Now it's you that controls
that. Yeah, and things, I've gone through some pretty significant changes in the last 12 months. I've gone through a separation after nearly 23 years of marriage, and got 3 beautiful older girls. And work hasn't got any easier. In fact, it's probably got more chaotic and stuff like that. But as hard as those decisions are, and as much as I have thoughts from time to time about what was my role in all of that, I just feel so much more at peace and equipped to be able to sort of work through those things, and probably less concerned about worrying about what others might think and stuff like that, because that can also, perceptions of what other people might be thinking and stuff like that can also really play on your mind as well.
I think what you're talking about, what a major difference has been for you, is that suffering, natural suffering versus unnecessary suffering. Really, in the past, it sounds like you would go through an experience and you would then, create more suffering yourself, or you'd put yourself in situations where you'd suffer even more because you thought you deserved it. Whereas now, you're having these natural suffering moments, but you're just experiencing them, and that's going to happen, but I'm not going to create more suffering on top of it.
That's definitely the big change, and again, it always continues to challenge me, but as I said before, I now stay less time in that thinking style or pattern, and look at what I can do, without putting unrealistic pressures and expectations on myself. So it's been a huge difference, and I'm not fearful or worried what might happen now. And I used to be worried about, how much does it take before, I have that tipping point where I do default and go that easy path and just go poor me, and and suffer even more. So I feel so much further away from that old Darren where that would be my default.
It's really powerful. I love hearing that, and it's the one thing I've had talking to the other guests on the other ambassadors on this chat is that every one of you has had stimulus, like in a, I guess, a negative connotation this year with work, with family, with relationships, and all of you have had that natural suffering. Like it's but what I've seen is that you've all gone, like, yes, I'm going to experience this, but I'm not going to make it worse than it needs to be. It's just, if I need to cry, I'm going to cry. If I get angry, I get angry. If I'm frustrated, I'm frustrated. But I'm not going to get angry and then yell at myself for being angry at a situation, or cry and then go, "Oh, you're a failure because you're crying." It sounds like you just experience it and go, "All right, well, what can I do next?" That's like constructive versus destructive. And it's amazing because if you've gone through 2020, if you've been alive in 2020, you've had natural suffering. I don't care who you are. No one has gone through this period with the life not being changed in some way dramatically. Kids, teenagers, adults, even people that have got work, I can't think of an industry which hasn't changed, even if it's going from no work to 80 hours of work. That's a massive change in life. That's a massive stimulus. And people are like, oh, but you've got work. Well, yeah, they've got work, but they've doubled their hours. So that's going to have a negative effect for a period of time, which they then need to work on. So that's been a great recurring theme. And I hope the listeners and watchers pick that up over time. I don't want to go too much into what it was like in the past when you had the depression or anxiety, but I think it's really good to paint a picture of what that depression, looked like. What were the symptoms and stuff for you? You said you weren't sleeping. What were some of the other things that were happening there? And because I like to paint the picture, because this is what happened in the past, this is what my coping mechanisms were. Whereas now, and then we'll go to what you do now when you find yourself in that emotional state.
Yeah. So I guess if I talk about, where I sort of had periods of depression, and I lie awake there in the stillness at night and not sleep for a bit. But I'd also just my motivation and drive was really, really at a low, and I sort of would disconnect from the world.
Yeah.
So, and I think about this often, my wife then at the time and my three girls, what was it like for them seeing me in that state where I'd almost be like this zombie state? And, when I think about it, I think, the girls saw that and didn't express a lot of sort of expression about what was going on, but I wonder what was going on in their mind. And as I said, my wife at the time, she was very aware of the triggers and where I was at those times. And I said this with Nick, at that time it was about, I was at stages where I felt sorry for myself, why is this happening to me? So I would often feel that if I wasn't getting a response from people, poor Darren, sort of that affection, comforting from people, that were they worried about me? Were they that concerned about me? And as I've sort of evolved and learnt to realise my role in all of this, I've accepted that they did their best and probably did beyond what would have been expected to help support me through this, but also look after themselves.
Yep.
So that was probably, I was probably very needy and very expecting that people would feel sorry for me and stuff like that. But then, I would take 2 weeks off, 3 weeks off at times. I had a couple of times where I'd take, a month off from work. So that sort of worried me, but at the same time, I probably was in these two minds. Do I work on myself, get help, and get back into those situations and confront them, but learn to confront them differently? And again, sometimes my default would be just stay removed, keep those negative things at bay, and that was going to fix me.
Yeah.
So that was the constant cycle that I sort of would go through. And as I said, I would feel that I was okay for extended periods of time, and then something would happen, then I'd be down here again. So, but I also, it was funny, I was very open about it, talking about it with my workplace and stuff like that. So I'd say, look, this is where I'm at the moment. And so, you know, to my surprise, you know, the workplace would adapt and support me, whether that was giving me time out or whether that was looking at what I was doing. And again, I look back on that and say, well, that helped me a lot, but what I needed to do was work on myself, and that's probably what I didn't so much then. So 2 years, the last 2 years, very different.
So let's break down the differences a little bit and paint the picture, because you've done the work. So you've started to take control of your life, rather than handing out your keys and expecting and being really needy. You went internal, basically, would be the easiest way to explain it. How did that change everything?
Oh, look, it actually, for the first time, I realized that the stuff that's going on around me wasn't necessarily going to control how I manage myself, how I guess, you know, how I could be happy, but recognize that you can't be up here all the time. You can't be happy all the time. Things aren't always going to go your way. So for me, it was about, well, what are the things that I can do to build my own mental health capacity to look at those very differently, and just some really basic strategies, you know, just stopping, and I would say to myself under my breath, that's interesting. So for the first few weeks, months of starting to see Nick, that's what I was saying to myself. That was my little circuit breaker. That's interesting. Before I felt that I had to jump in and react to something. And yeah, it's happened naturally, but I guess there was a significant turning point. As I said, that was 3 weeks into starting to see Nick.
It's amazing how, like, I'm understanding where you're coming from, where you say it was a really natural process, because it really is when you actually go internal, like you actually start living true to who you are. And it does. It's a really natural process, where external, when you're trusting your surroundings, which is, you can't trust anything externally 100%. You never can, because everyone will ideally put themselves first, whether it's subconsciously or consciously. Things are going to happen, you know, pandemics are going to happen, fires are going to happen. These things are going to happen, and you don't necessarily have control over it. If you throw yourself out there and say, that's dictating my happiness, you have no control. When you start to go internal, it does. It flows naturally, and it's really hard to explain. And I'm reading a few books that's, Nick's got me to read, Buddhism Plain and Simple, and a few like that. And there's a lot of people, obviously back hundreds and thousands of years ago, are like, oh, if I just meditate more, I'll become, holy. And then Buddha's like, no, that's not how it works. It happens. The more you try, the more you search for that desire, the further away you sort of get from it. It's a natural process of awakening, really.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to explain to people. They're like, how do you do it? You're like, I actually really don't know.
Yeah.
But I also love that you're not the first person that said, that's interesting. And I don't know if you even realize this, but even prior to us talking about that, you actually said it a couple of times early on in our chat. It just sort of comes out now, and it really is that automatic circuit breaker. And I do it on a golf course. If I did it last week, first round back after 4 months, and I hit a couple of balls into trees, and I went, that's interesting, because I wasn't doing it 4 months ago, and instead of swearing at the ball or blaming the golf club or blaming, not being able to play, I just went, that's interesting. And then, 50 metres down the hole, I'd find myself laughing. And instead of continuing to rant for the next 4 holes about that one shot and having a horrible, unenjoyable round, I just laughed. I just went, I'm not a pro golfer, so it's okay. Even pro golfers do. I was watching Bryce DeChambeau, like a week after winning a title, hit a 10 in, keep putting balls into houses and stuff like that. So it instinctively is that circuit breaker. What else, I guess, is the main things that you've learned over the last 2 years about yourself from Nick, or, with going within? What are some of the things you do in your life now that help as well?
Things are temporary. That's pretty important, particularly with COVID and stuff at the moment. The fact that things might be going on now, but it'll pass and it'll be something else. So
no, there won't be anything else after this. It's going to be perfect.
Yeah, so just looking at that, and I guess just being comfortable that you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to know everything. Certainly don't need to be perfect. If you go in with that mindset, then you're not bitterly disappointed at the end by creating something that's totally unrealistic. So I've learnt sort of those those thinking styles where you see, I might get this around the wrong way, but you'll help me out here.
Yeah.
In terms of what those the thinking, your beliefs, and what comes reality, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I understand that principle that Nick talks about, and how how that can really lead to quite destructive thinking style. So just not worrying about things having to be perfect and having to have all the answers is another helpful thing. That I've learned and developed. And again, we talked earlier about sort of seeing people, how they're coping versus managing. See how sometimes people are not dealing with situations terribly well, and again, just using those words about things being temporary, things being imperfect, and that's okay. Again, surprisingly, you get really good outcomes, and people are not already beating themselves up before they've even given it a go.
Yeah.
I'm very much about telling people just give it a go, be in the flow, whatever happens. So
So what you're talking about, so I just pulled it up here. So it's basically our belief systems that we run off. So it sounds like what you're doing is when those thoughts and feelings come up, so it goes feelings, behaviors.
Yep.
Sounds like you going through the thoughts, going through the feelings, and then going, all right, where is this coming from? Like, oh, this is coming from the fact that I think everything should be perfect. I think my employees should be, the people that are working under me should be perfect all the time. They should be getting every task in on time, rather than saying, you know what, sometimes they're not going to get the task in. They're not perfect. Yes, if they continue to do that, obviously they will lose the job. But it's having that acceptance that not everyone's, because I find that, we have these beliefs ourselves, but we also we push them onto others, and we don't realize it, but that's why we get so disappointed day to day with who we are, because we're not perfect. We're running off those beliefs, and the other two are, I must get what I want when I want it, and I must be loved and liked. And it's really funny because we all run off those beliefs at time. We just do. There's no one that wouldn't have those beliefs every now and then, because no one gets what they want. And if you really, really want something, then you're going to take it a little bit personally. Like, it's just naturally, you've just got to then, as you say, go, that's interesting, step back. All right, where's this coming from? All right, I'm not going to get what I want all the time. So this is okay. It's not the end of the world. I'll work through this. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to sort of add on your story or anything like that? We'll try and get you on in the next couple of months again, and we'll sort of check in and add more to the story of Darren.
Yeah. So we talked about meditation, and doing more meditation is going to fix everything, but I have been doing I've been doing meditation through MindFit. Gosh, how many weeks has that been now? Say a month or more?
Maybe 5 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, 5 weeks. 5 weeks. So, again, I've tried meditation in the past and maybe saw it as a bit of a solution or a fix, but the last 5-6 weeks, doing that regularly, guided stuff 4 days a week and doing a bit on my own, and doing it at the start of the day. It's mental health practice. It's good to train the brain and the mind and stuff like that. Yeah, so I've been doing that first thing in the morning, and I've just found that really resets myself for the day. Again, sort of don't go into the day expecting everything to go my way, and just being sort of open to things will happen, and you won't know. It's just about how the choices you make and how you deal and respond with those things as they happen. So that meditation stuff has been really complementary to the maintenance work that I've been doing with Nick. And those sessions, there's a bit of conversation at the start. Obviously, there's a bit of guided stuff throughout the meditation. Then there's time sitting there in your own silence, and working on trying to stay still and observe and not get too stuck in worrying about where your mind and your thinking takes you. So I think we call them mental reps, don't we? Because it's a mental health gym.
Yes.
So that and what I've learned and what I continue to sort of apply and practice is really just my way of maintaining good mental health. Just keeping on top of that and practicing it and strengthening it, because you can't just think, oh, okay, I've mastered this now. I've far from mastered it. You can't just say, oh, I've done this now and I'm right, and expect it just to be able to maintain that without working on it continuously.
I love that as well, because it's people going with this expectation they're going to be fixed in a couple of weeks, but realistically, all it does the first few weeks is they're just light bulb moments where you start to see things a bit differently, and it's practicing over time. So it's not just time, it's practicing over time, which starts to really change things. As Nick explained, you can't go into a gym and just start lifting 20 kilo biceps. You build up over time. If you stop doing it for a year, you're not going to be able to start where you left it. You're going to have to start a bit lighter. The muscle memory will kick back in, and it's mental health is exactly the same. It's practicing over time. It's being consistent, and you talk about regularly attending the meditation, and I like to think of it, as it's just part of the pie. So we've got a 360-degree pie, and meditation might be 15%, and your monthly checkups or 3 monthly checkups might be 15%, and your nutrition might be 15-20%, and your exercise might be, and then your family and friends might be, and you've got all these different things to the pie. Maybe going for a walk, maybe spending time with the dog, not relying. I think that's one of the things Nick teaches is, don't rely on meditation, don't rely on gym, don't rely on anything to have a holistic type view of the situation, because it's really funny. People think you get addicted to drugs and alcohol and stuff like that, but you can get addicted to anything, and it can take you down a very negative path. So I think there's been some great messages there.
And that pie, it's about, and again, what I learned through Nick, I might have been overcompensating in certain areas, thinking that's going to take care of my mental health. So yeah, it's having that right balance.
You wouldn't be the only one to do that. That's for sure. I did it for probably 3 years. I just did all physical and nutritional, peak fitness, peak nutrition, and then had 2 hip surgeries and gave up. I was like, because I thought it was all good for my mental health. What I didn't know is I was just putting more band-aids over some mental health trauma and emotional trauma and baggage, and it all came tumbling down very, very quickly. When my running got taken away, it taught me a lot of life lessons, which is, I'm so grateful to have that now in my life, and to be able to help a lot of people through COVID who have had gyms or running or whatever taken away from them. So thank you for your time today, Daz.
Thanks, Shane.
Fantastic to chat with you, and I look forward to, getting to know you more and, bouncing off ideas off you with MindFit men's groups and stuff like that. So anyone that is watching, over time, you'll be invited to stuff along the way. So thank you very much.
Thanks, mate. I'll have to dust off my golf clubs.
You will.
Yeah.